right, welcome into the NFL DFS PrizePicks show. Myself, Greg Ehrenberg, with you for the next 25 minutes. We're going to give you as comprehensive and deep of a look at how to not only use PrizePicks.com, but maximize it so you could win some money. And make sure as you're listening and following along that you use, if you haven't already, our promo code Awesemo, and we'll match up to $100 of a deposit. Your money, our money together. All you need to do is use our promo code Awesemo. Greg's in the house, myself as well, Jordan producing. So if you're in the chat, make sure you say hello, as we see Drop Roses have done that already. We appreciate everybody hanging with us. It's been a little bit, Greg. Always a pleasure, man.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we did a show together. And by the way, for anybody who isn't familiar with PrizePicks, they have everything here. They have, and you could also parlay different things together. So there's NFL up here right now, MMA, and then there's esports, WNBA. So if you're somebody who's just has a wealth of knowledge across different things, and you're like, hey, you know what? I bet that Christian McCaffrey, he's going to have over 1,200 rushing yards this year. But you're also really confident that Rafita is going to have over 4.5 kills in his whatever sport that is. There's everything going on here. You can play them together.
Is that League of Legends with kills? I feel like it's either esports or MMA.
No, this is just real life hunting. These are just it's just people.
Well, look, you never know what you can get on PrizePicks.com, and you're all about over-unders, and it's as simple as it could get. Greg mentioned the two ways. We'll tell you about the flex play, the power play. The big thing is we want to get you involved right away. Use our promo code Awesemo. Rare that you'll find a spot that will match money up to that as far as $100. But Greg, you hinted at it. And we're going to look at today some season-long props. We have our tool on board, the NFL season-long props tool that everybody should be using. I know you have been big on it as well this offseason into the regular season on Awesemo. So we'll kind of use that as our gauge to go over-under on a bunch of season-long props today.
Yeah, and by the way, the thing I was mentioning before, that was League of Legends, but there's also CSGO, which is different. That's Counter-Strike, because I just Googled that, so I know that. But yeah, so there's Counter-Strike, League of Legends, so different esports here, and once again, you could parlay that with baseball, NFL, tennis, soccer, so there's really everything here. And there was Olympics during the Olympics, there was Highlight for a little bit, so they definitely have sports that you don't get anywhere else.
Highlight is intense, man. If you're going over under PrizePicks, winning some money on Highlight, this is the show for you. We promise you that.
Sure. Actually, we're probably not the Highlight show to go to, but NFL, we've got that. And also, like you mentioned, we have season-long projections up on the site over at Awesemo.com, and they're free to use. So you can just click on those, and that's a really good way to go over the site and just cross-reference some of the stuff we have here. And you could just see like, oh, and you could just point out some random, let's say like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who could start talking there, who has a prop that our projections really like the over for. So, individual ones we could just look at somebody like Ryan Fitzpatrick, for instance. We have him over on PrizePicks. He has an over under of 3,900.5 passing yards. Over on the site, we have him projected for 4,324 passing yards for the year. So that's actually a 62% chance we have projected for it to hit the over.
Yeah, it's amazing to be able to use the tool that we have provided for you, all the numbers crunched with Alex on site, and then go to PrizePicks and just have it as a guide as you can go around. Now, just to be clear for people who may be new to PrizePicks.com, jumping in this show, trying to figure out just what exactly is going on, it's really simple. 2, 3, 4, or 5 different plays that you select, and then you go over or under. It's that easy. It's that simple. Based on your own research, hopefully you're incorporating what we have on site at Awesemo.com, and you have the ability to run a flex play or a power play. Now, if you hit 2 of 3 on your flex play for 3 plays, for example, then you're going to get 1.25 return. You hit all 3 on the flex play, you get 2.25 return. And then the power play is essentially the PrizePicks parlay there, where if you lock all 3 of them in, then you're going to get 5 times. If you lock 5 in and you hit the power play, then you get 10 times your return. So there's some incentive in there, Greg, to lock a bunch in at the very least on the flex, if not to go full guns out on the power play.
Yeah, it depends how confident you are. And depending which players you look at also, there's also ones that, we have projected with pretty good odds of hitting the overs or unders. Some of the quarterbacks, maybe some of those ones are a little bit dicey. And also, if you guys have any props you like in the chat, point those out and we could talk about some of them. The first one that we have pointed out here, we've got Drop Roses saying that he will gladly take the over on Mac Jones. So, anybody else has anything that they like, point it out, and we can discuss it a little bit.
Yeah, let's look there because I have one, and I believe both of us have placed a wager, a futures wager on this very same one. I'll credit you because you were the first person that it was actually a tweet to alert us to the NFL season-long player props on Awesemo. But let's start with Drop Roses. I know Drop Roses was eagerly waiting for you to tell how your summer is and a little bit of the personal back and forth. So if that goes to the back burner for just a second, let's look at Mac Jones and that specific prop there. Now that's touchdowns, right? As far as Mac Jones is concerned, because I assume that's touchdowns, not passing yards.
It could be. I don't know.
Should we?
Let's
do it our own.
Yeah, but also let's ask Drop Roses. Do you mean because he said gladly take the over? I assume he meant specifically he was looking at either the passing yards or the passing touchdowns. By the way, passing yards for Mac Jones 3,500 and a half. The passing touchdowns for Mac Jones 22 and a half. So actually, of all the players on the board, I believe Mac Jones has so these are the only players with lower passing touchdown props than Mac Jones are Zach Wilson, Jared Goff, and Jalen Hurts. Of passing yards, 3,505. The only players that are lower, Lamar Jackson. That's it. He's the only one who's lower. So I think that what this really comes down to is how confident are we that Mac Jones is going to be the starting quarterback throughout the entire season? To me, I think that seems fairly likely, especially considering that Cam Newton's no longer on the roster. And even if the Patriots really struggle, let's say that Mac Jones is terrible, don't they still just run him out there because they want him to be able to get the reps? And, when you consider a 17-game season, that is a fairly low passing yard total, only that 3,500 and a half.
I think it's a great point you raised where he's kind of bulletproof to the circumstances around him. And if he's not playing well, team is down, he's going to be out there. And due to volume alone, he's going to be throwing the ball. He's got a couple of guys that they added as well in Bourne and Aguilar. So they should be able to at least stretch the field a little bit more than we've seen. I think, for a number that low, Greg, it makes sense, at least on the surface there, to go over the 22 and a half touchdowns at 3,500 passing yards. I like your point even better to go over the passing yards than touchdowns, because I feel like even if he's not scoring, there's still going to be plenty of opportunity for them to throw the football. Yes, they're running back heavy, but it goes back to, I think, the biggest point about Mac Jones you raised, Greg, which is he ain't going anywhere, no matter the circumstance of game flow.
No, and I mean, just some quick math here. So over the course of 17 games, you need him average. It's more than 205 passing yards per game, and he hits that mark. And the other thing, too, if he sucks, he's still going to be playing because then the team's just rebuilding to have him out there. If he's good, obviously, then he's good, and then he's going to keep playing. But to me, I mean, unless this is just going to be a situation where he's only going to throw like 15 times a game, I think he should be able to hit the over. Obviously, there's a caveat if he gets hurt, but that's always going to be an issue with any kind of betting with any sort of taking football overs. But in general, this is a pretty low prop at 3,500 and a half. So Drop Roses, who we have to start our football season by agreeing with Drop Roses in the chat, which has never been a good course of action in the past, but I'm on board with him here.
Wait, this is a DFS futures type program here where we're offering futures advice, and you're telling me that Drop Roses does not have a great track record as the leadoff hitter?
Well, in his opinion, the best player in the NFL is Drew Lock. So take that for what it's worth.
That's the lead. I think we should have led with that in the backdrop. No, look, it's a great prop, and Drop Roses found one, as you mentioned, where Mac Jones is on the bottom as far as a number is concerned. So if it makes sense on the surface, especially with what we have on site with our season-long props tools, then it's much easier to go over that low number. I did see another question as far as a quarterback throwing the ball, but I wanted to get to this guy because I see the number super low compared to what we have on site. It's a season-long prop that I believe both you and I have placed a wager that he not only will hit that projection, but lead the league in rushing touchdowns as a quarterback. And that's Lamar Jackson. And we have Lamar, as far as rushing touchdowns, in that 11 range, that 11 and a half range, below just Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook. If you look on PrizePicks, his over-unders for futures, and I have to double check this, is 7.5, Greg. That to me is a wide range, nearly 4 full touchdown difference. I feel like you kind of have to pound that over.
Yeah, so according to our projections, it has about a 70% chance to hit the over here. And the other thing to consider too with Lamar Jackson's situation in the offseason, J.K. Dobbins out for the season. And like, what is the running back situation going to look like? Does that mean that we're going to see more of Lamar Jackson now in the red zone? Also, keep in mind, Justice Hill, we just found out that he tore his Achilles. He tore his Achilles like a week ago, and then the report came out yesterday. But that aside, this is a team that's very thin in running back depth. It's fairly likely they're going to sign somebody, but of the guys they wanted to give touches to entering the season, they're not there anymore. And that's something that makes me think we could see Lamar Jackson run the ball more. And yeah, I mean, when you consider this is only a 7.5 total compared to our projections where we have him at 11.5, of everything that's up on PrizePicks, I say this is actually probably my most confident over.
Yes, without a doubt. And look, even if we had him projected at 10 rushing touchdowns or 9 pre-injury, of course, to Dobbins, I think you'd still look at that number and ask yourself, what's wrong? Like, why is that only 7.5 touchdowns? Forget what we have projected. Forget the futures bet at whatever you got it in as far as him leading the league. Just on the surface of getting to 8 rushing touchdowns in order for that to hit seemed a little off. But look, that's the beauty of what we do here on PrizePicks is search and try to mine some value. It's always nice when you have that accompanied with our tools as well. And it's much easier that it jumps out like that big of a discrepancy. It's a lot.
Yeah, and I mean,
by all means.
I think the main reason it's set at 7 or 7.5 is if you look at the last 2 years, Lamar Jackson, each of them has rushed for 7 touchdowns. So when you consider that, the 7.5 seems reasonable. But then you consider the running back situation, the guys who are out, and then also that it's a 17-game season as opposed to 16. And this seems to set up for better rushing and more rushing opportunities for Lamar Jackson.
I saw another Anthony Siv. I apologize. Burrow. So looking at Joe Burrow here, let's just look at passing touchdowns first for Burrow. We have him projected, Greg, at 24.5 touchdowns on our site, our season-long props tool. Now, if you look at PrizePicks, they have him at 26.5, which, again, there's a difference of 2 touchdowns to the lower. So if you're going to rely on our tools as a guide, it would tell you that for 2 touchdowns over, you should go under that. I will say, though, that this is the first time looking at where Awesemo is telling you to go under, the number being a little bit of a gap at 2 touchdowns. I would still take a long look at going over, mainly because, yes, Joe Mixon is projected to be one of the top running backs, but I also feel like through game narrative and script, you're still going to see a lot of Joe Burrow throwing the ball. He's got 3 young weapons around him that he can throw to. Even if they're down big, I can see them scoring a lot. But then I go back to our tool, which is saying, shut up, Shander, and just take the under.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to be concerned about a couple of things. Number one, Joe Burrow's health, right? He had a devastating leg injury last year where he got tackled, his leg bent sideways, and he, tore everything that exists in your leg. And the other thing also, the Bengals offensive line still sucks. So I get that he has good weapons to throw to, but also this is a division where he has to face defense like the Ravens, the Steelers, which are good defenses, and he still has a bad offensive line. So you worry about his matchups, you worry about his protection, and you worry, is he going to be able to stay healthy? Is he going to be able to stay upright again? So with all that considered, I understand why our projections lean towards the under. If you look at the passing yard projection for him, it's right on the money. It's something that's the prop that's up on the site is almost the exact same as what we have projected for him. I don't feel massively confident in the under, but if you had to take one side, we do have the under with a 59% chance of hitting. And more than anything, I'm just concerned about Joe Burrow's health and that offensive line.
Another reminder here to take full advantage of our promo code on prizepicks.com. Use it, Awesemo, and we'll match your first deposit up to $100. So that's a lot of money that you can use to then make a bunch of money. Thursday night football right around the corner. Greg mentioned it. I mean, you could do everything possible here on PrizePicks. You don't just need to keep it for the NFL. If you want to bounce around from tennis to critical, what was the strike game? I apologize. I know LOL, but Counter-Strike.
Well, we're really aging ourselves here. Yeah, it is a CS:GO. That is a.
You're younger than me.
Yeah, I mean, we're still, but it's still younger than me. I didn't grow up with Counter-Strike, but yeah, that's Counter-Strike, League of Legends. Those are the esports, and there's also WNBA, soccer, tennis, MLB, NFL, and MMA up on the site right now.
It's easy too, because if you're out there wagering on this, then on any sport from Critical Strike to MMA to the NFL, then you have a wealth of information. You might as well put it to use here, especially because you can take advantage of the flex play where you get 2 of 3, 4 of 5 right. You're still going to get 1.25 return, all of them right. You're going to double that up. Or you can go the power play and really go 5 to 10 times, up to 10 times your return on that. Have you looked at, I know you've been doing a bunch individually as far as the VODs are concerned for PrizePicks and looking at individual season-long props. Where are you most bullish when it comes to a receiving prop? If it's receiving yards or receiving touchdowns, because we have a bunch here from an NFL futures standpoint on PrizePicks. So just kind of marrying where our tools are, where your brain is, and also where we can take advantage of it here on PrizePicks.
All right, so let's go to the receiving touchdowns, and I'll pull up the receiving touchdown projections we have up on the site, and we'll see which players are listed here. So the first thing that kind of stands out to me is actually this is going to kind of correlate with talking about Lamar Jackson before. And that is with Mark Andrews. So something that we currently have projected is we have a lot of the Ravens touchdowns to come on the ground as opposed to in the air. So Mark Andrews has a over-under total on PrizePicks of 6.5 receiving touchdowns, whereas on our projections, we have only projected for 5 this year. So that makes it seem like a little bit of a stretch for him to reliably get to 7. And then it also kind of correlates to, if you look at the passing props for Lamar Jackson, we like the unders on those, we like the overs for the rushing props. So to me, I would be, and I think it also makes sense to parlay these together where it's, hey, how are the Ravens going to be getting their touchdowns? We think they're going to be getting them on the ground. Then it makes sense to say like, hey, let's go Lamar Jackson over for his rushing touchdown props. And then maybe go under with Mark Andrews and his receiving touchdowns.
That's a great point, right? Where you would do that in real life. You might as well take full advantage of what we have here on prizepicks.com, which is certain things flow together. If you're looking at season-long narrative game scripts that would play out for one to hit, then you might as well factor them in. And again, you've got a better chance of that all hitting on one spot if, in fact, especially with the J.K. Dobbins injury, things shift a little bit. So, no, I think, and look, we also have the power play where you put everything together, 3 up to 5 picks, and you're really maximizing your return. So from a future standpoint, right, you might as well ante up a little more and make it a little more interesting than just a unit play, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think that's something too, is it makes sense, where can we find stuff that, has a little bit of an added chance of correlation here to where it's like, okay, if one outcome happens, what else is potentially more likely to happen? And these are 2 ones that make sense to me. Lamar Jackson over for rushing touchdowns, Mark Andrews under for receiving. And then also it's something that lines up with our projections, where those are things that we also lean towards. So that is something that when we talk about those flex plays, the power plays, I do really like combining those.
We have Kyle Pitts. I was just looking right next to Mark Andrews, and I'm just fascinated by where Pitts is, not only as far as the ability for him to really make a home early on in Atlanta, but just how difficult it is for rookies to come in and dominate from a receiving touchdown standpoint. So looking at Pitts, now we have Pitts projected right at 6 on Awesemo, and you look at where Pitts is, it's a 6.5. So this is sharp here as far as where the projection is to where the actual play is. He's a rookie, and although he's from where I am here, so I'm not going to, there's no Pitts slander on my end, at least I can promise you that, Greg. But I feel like just the rookie element alone, knowing that there's some other targets on there, yes, our projection is leaning towards under, but I feel like a little more confident in going under that play, just looking at it next to Mark Andrews, that same number. To get to 7 or 8 touchdowns for Pitts in a pass-heavy offense isn't difficult, but I still would lean under there.
It would just be a stay away for me. Like, I just don't know what to expect from the first year. We don't know how he's going to be used in the offense. My gut feeling is that he's going to have a monster year, but who's to really say? It's not something I want to put my money on until I really see it play out for DFS contests that are playing over the weekend. He's certainly somebody I'm going to want to be getting exposure to, but just for a yearly type thing, like I want to see how this plays out. And the other thing to consider too is, he's going to be one receiver like 1A/1B. Him and Calvin Ridley are going to be the top guys there. But think about all the success that Julio Jones had in Atlanta, but still just wasn't a guy who was a frequent red zone target or a guy who had massive touchdown years. So I'm going to bring up Julio Jones's receiving stats. And that's also something that kind of makes me nervous to just say like, oh yeah, we're going to for sure see Kyle Pitts find the end zone a lot. Like he might have a massive year in terms of catches and receptions and yardage and all that. But last year, Julio Jones had 3 receiving touchdowns. The year before, he had 6. The year before that, he had 8. The year before, 3. The year before, 6. So he's only gone. Julio Jones, who was widely considered one of the, if not the best wide receivers in the league for a very long time, in his last 5 years in Atlanta, he only went over 6.5 receiving touchdowns once. So that's something that definitely makes me concerned in terms of how frequently is Pitts going to be targeted in the red zone.
I love it. Nice application of numbers and data right there. And it makes a lot of sense. Is there anybody else? I'm curious just to build off of that. Do you think that there's any way to play off of the unknown for a rookie futures? And I'm looking specifically, and I'm throwing you on the spot here, so I'll talk through it just a second. But I'm looking because you're right, especially at the wide receiver position, it's really difficult. And I'm throwing Pitts in there as far as a 1A, 1B, as you mentioned, at the tight end spot. But it's difficult to predict even in a pass heavy offense. I do wonder, looking at one guy specifically in Najee Harris, the same element exists, Greg, of the unknown, and we'd love to kind of see where the application and execution of the ground game is for Harris. But I think there's also the built-in expectation that you don't take somebody like that this early in a draft without the heavy reliance on at least reestablishing a run game. I say that we have him projected at 942 yards on Awesemo. His total on PrizePicks.com is 1050.5 as far as rushing yards. So I understand the point you made, which is, look, it's really difficult to battle through the unknown, the variance that you get for rookies. But I do wonder if you can maneuver around that specifically with Harris in his spot here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and it's once again, it's kind of hard to say. And I don't think that just because somebody uses draft equity on a player that they're guaranteed to be in a big role. Now, with that said, I think that Harris is going to play a big role this year. But, you know, the last year, the Packers used high draft picks on Jordan Love and A.J. Dillon, and basically neither of them played at all. So while I think that Harris is going to play a big role, like, is he going to play the Le'Veon Bell role where he's going to be on the field for Pittsburgh nearly 100% of the snaps? Is it going to be 90% of the snaps? Is it going to be something where, you know, it's still like a 70-30 split? And that's something that, you know, is still a little bit of an unknown to me. So once again, if I have to take one side, I'm going to lead the under just based on our projections, but I don't feel super confident either way.
Give us, on your way out here, something that you've been super confident in, that you've talked about, that you've referenced in the Prize Pick VODs for people to look at and factor into the future here. Any position, any sport, even if you want to go back to CSGO, as Jordan scolding us on the chat for not knowing it came out 21 years ago. But anything that we've missed that you absolutely love, Greg Ehrenberg?
You know, individually, I think we've hit on a few of the ones that project really well for us. I just want to see what do we have for what is up with the where did it go? I was just looking one. So Jalen, how confident are you that Jalen Hurts is going to be the guy for Philadelphia this year? Because we haven't projected pretty high over here. It's at 655.5. I was on the wrong stat screen there for a second. But so Jalen Hurts over on PrizePicks, 655.5 rushing yards. We haven't projected for 867, which is a 66% projected chance hitting the over. That's 24% expected ROI. So I really like the Jalen Hurts over, but I'm a little wary of them trading for Gardner Minshew and him being in the mix. How confident are you, because you're a Philly guy, you do Philly radio, that Jalen Hurts is going to be the guy throughout the year?
I think that it's going to take an injury or it's going to take something so catastrophically bad that you don't have to worry about this prop hitting, right? Like, it's going to take one of the two extremes of him just being dog shit out there or him getting hurt. I think Minshew, they looked at Minshew as a guy who has good numbers for somebody taken where he is, the expectation of being brought in and being a more consistent backup than they got from Flacco. So, and if you have to go to Minshew, that's not killing your team from running the quarterback, mobile quarterback standpoint. Flacco's a statue. here's where I like this prop a lot is if you just go on the history of this offensive line, guys they're relying on that have broken down year in and year out. We saw this even last year, Greg, where Hurts was thrown into a pile of shit, which was that Eagles offense. He can move. And at times, he's just because he's younger in this game, he's going to move and talk a little more so. So I think the big play potential is there. Nick Sirianni seems intent on moving him around outside of the pocket, having him throw. There's going to be big play and red zone potential for him to be on the ground. I love that prop going over, especially where we have it on PrizePicks. Your concern is valid, but I think it would take two extremes of him just being so bad the prop doesn't matter or him getting hurt. And again, you could argue that the prop is out at that point.
Yeah, and if you look at his rushing attempts, the starts he had down the stretch of last year against the Saints, 18, against the Cardinals, 11, against the Cowboys, 9, against Washington, 8. And when you consider he averaged 5.6 yards per rush attempt last year, it's pretty hard to not expect him to get, north of 100 rushing attempts. And, that in itself already gets into the prop. So, for me, for sure, I think this is a pretty confident over, with the only caveat being could he lose his gig to Minshew. But like you, I don't think that's the most likely outcome. So over on Jalen Hurts.
I love the numbers you just brought up about him running the ball last year, because that was with a head coach who refused to move both Wentz and Hurts around in the pocket, out of the pocket. It's what we were killing Doug Peterson for the majority of the year. Now you add somebody in Sirianni who's committed to that. Yeah, this seems off by all means, that total right there. Awesome, brother. At G Ehrenberg DFS, you want to follow along with what Greg's doing in real life and hear from a DFS to PrizePicks. You never know. You might get the critical strike play of the day from Greg Ehrenberg, but you have to be following on Twitter. Counter-strike. Why am I still saying critical strike? Jordan is like, dude,
because you're a million years old, you have a kid, and you're losing brain cells.
I know. I had this kid too late in life, honestly. It's all the whippet damage is coming back to me. At G Ehrenberg DFS, make sure you thank Jordan for producing the show. Hit us up, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, all 3 channels, Awesemo Odds and the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. But really, we want you to take full advantage of our promo code Awesemo and get up to $100 matched at PrizePicks. For Greg, I'm Eytan. We'll see you all and have a great week. Good luck.